I have to tell you, looking at the political campaign, it may be dishonest, it may be corrupt, but we're getting a lot of entertainment value from this. And I'll tell you who right now is the number one star of this comedy show that they're calling the GOP primaries, and that's got to be Rick Santorum, who, like most politicians, will say whatever he thinks the current audience wishes to hear. But sometimes I don't think he's really paying attention to what it looks like for the rest of the world. We had, Santorum not too long ago was claiming that Satan is attacking America, as if Washington, D.C. wasn't already doing a wonderful job at trashing the place here. Then a week ago, Santorum was saying that Iran or Al-Qaeda was going to attack North Dakota. Like, why? It's the only state that has a banking system like the one that's there in Iran. And then yesterday he was saying that there are Nazis in the White House, Nazis in Washington, D.C., and he's standing up opposed to them. And then finally this one came down today. Rick Santorum is actually said Obama is helping Iran to get the bomb. So Rick Santorum, if you're out there listening to the show, or if any of your associates are listening to the show, listen. I mean this in the best of all possible ways. No matter how much of a hurry you are in to get to these campaign speeches, please do not dry your hair in the microwave oven anymore. It's beginning to show. Now, on a more serious note, as you are probably aware, an inspection team from the International Atomic Energy Agency is now in Iran to basically do an inspection and make sure there's been no non-diversion of nuclear materials for weapons purposes. Now, we're getting this real big stink story. It's all over the media here, and I notice everywhere it's posted, they will not allow commenting because they know there's a big hole in the story, which I'm going to talk about here very, very quickly. But the gist of it is that the IAEA, once they were inside Iran, they requested permission to visit this military base. And the official story is the IAEA suspects there might be nuclear weapons activity on that base. And Iran said, no, you're not allowed to go there. It's classified, development. And they're trying to make a big stink that Iran is hiding something. They're denying access to the suspected Iran nuclear site. And they're trying to make a big deal. Ooh, bad Iran, bad Iran. You need to understand how the rules of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty are written and why. Under the terms of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, all nuclear materials go into Iran are accounted for perfectly. And the IAEA, under the terms of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, is allowed to go into Iran and inspect the nuclear materials to make sure there is no diversion. So far, so good. That's what they've found. There's nothing unaccounted for. Now, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is not a blank license for the IAEA inspectors to go everywhere they want. Remember, back in Iraq, they were demanding to go into Saddam Hussein's bedroom, like he keeps an atomic bomb underneath his bed. And the reason for that is because nations do have secrets that they legitimately must guard from outsiders. It's called spying, it's called espionage. And IAEA inspectors have been caught in the past conducting spying operations on behalf of whatever intelligence agency they work for. So we're going to take a break for commercials. When we come back, we're going to explain exactly how they're trying to double shuffle you on this yet again. We'll be right back. Anyway, getting back to the situation here, we're talking about this pseudo ersatz hope it can be turned into a scandal story that's going around, that Iran will not allow the IAEA onto this one military base they've requested to go. And again, remember, we've got Israel just a little further south of there that has nuclear weapons. They were caught trying to sell one to South Africa. They won't sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They won't allow inspectors in anywhere at all. And yet we're supposed to think Iran is the bad guy. Now, as I mentioned before, when the IAEA was all over Iraq and Saddam was trying to be very accommodating to them, he actually did let them inspect his own home. Like, he's got nuclear weapons in the pantry or something, or mustard gas in the bathroom sink or something like that. But that's not what the IAEA is supposed to do, because IAEA agents are very often intelligence agencies for various governments covered as IAEA inspectors, and they're using their ability to inspect certain things as a cover for espionage. And they've been caught doing it before. It happened in Iraq. So the way the rules are is all nuclear materials go into the nation, in this case Iran. They're all accounted for. There's very good bookkeeping and auditing and tracking, certainly better than they do with American votes. And then the IAEA is free to go in there anytime they want and keep an eye on those nuclear materials, put up TV cameras, and make sure that nothing is being done with these nuclear materials that is contrary to the restrictions on the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. But it is not a license to just go anywhere they want to go and pry into Iran's military secrets of a non-nuclear nature. And so Iran basically understands war is coming. They're making their own preparations, and the last thing they need is somebody working for the United States of America wandering around their military bases taking note of what those preparations are. That would be stupid. And so the media is trying to turn this into a really big deal. Well, how dare they not let us into their bedroom anytime that we want? Which is what we're almost getting to here in the United States of America. You know, we're going to turn on your webcams. We're going to listen through your smartphones. We're going to follow you around. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about, which, of course, is completely nonsense here.
We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I'm beginning to think I have too many keyboards and too many screens to keep track of while doing this show here in the world's smallest audio booth on the island of Oahu, Hawaii here. Before we get back into the news here, somebody just wrote in on the email a reminder, basically confirming what I told you before. That we're talking about the situation where the IAEA requested permission to see this military base at Parchin in Iran. Iran said no, and the Western media is trying to turn this into a big, huge reason. We got to go bomb them. They wouldn't let us in to look at the stuff. And as I pointed out, under the rules of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, it's not a blanket license to go anywhere that you want to, because the nation has a right to protect its military secrets. The way the inspections are supposed to work is all nuclear materials entering the country are accounted for, and those nuclear materials and their locations are subject to inspection at any time by the IAEA. But the IAEA can't just wander around looking at whatever they want to. That's the rules. Apparently, in 2005, Iran, as a courtesy, did allow the IAEA into the Parchin military base. And the IAEA in 2006 reported that visual inspection showed that the sites were not what they thought they were from the overhead satellite imagery. So they've already been in there, and they've already verified that what the satellite imagery was interpreted to be was not accurate. Remember when they were all over Iraq, and they were showing us these satellite pictures that were really blurry, and we know they can actually be a lot sharper, but it was these blurry white blobs, and Colin Powell was out there saying, this is a decontamination vehicle, and this is and they'd go and they'd find out it was just, you know, it's an ordinary fire truck is what they were calling a decontamination vehicle. Remember the portable biological weapons labs that they were showing all over, and there were these trailers with all this piping on it, and they said, these were used to make biological weapons and roll around where they couldn't be found. And it turned out they were just weather balloon inflators. And not only were they just weather balloon inflators, because you have to chemically make the hydrogen on the spot. There's no way to actually put it in a tank and have it stay there for very long, because it's such a tiny atom. Not only were these balloon inflators, it was already known that's where they were, because Iraq bought them from Great Britain. It wasn't a new, exotic, top-secret piece of equipment. It was something that's kind of a standard. You go to Great Britain into their military supplies catalog, and you go to balloon inflators, and that's what you get. And they were trying to tell America they're mobile biological weapons laboratories. That's not what they are. It was just nothing but constant lies. Constant lies. Now, speaking of constant lies, one of the lies that we are constantly seeing waved at us is the claim that Ahmadinejad over in Iran made a comment about wiping Israel off the face of the map. Now, that translation was provided to us by an organization called MEMRI, M-E-M-R-I, And if you want to learn more about them, you can get online and Google selective memory, spelled MEMRI. Basically, memory is an Israeli intelligence propaganda operation that offers free translations of Middle East news articles to the Western press, but the translations are always skewed in Israel's favor. And in this case, what Ahmadinejad actually said in his speech was that because of its internal corruptions, Israel would vanish from the pages of history, which is a very different passive kind of observation, and by the way, it's one I agree with. But that's a very passive comment to make as opposed to the very directive, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the map. But that kind of bogus mistranslation is what is used to fan up the war. Now, and then the American media, the Western media said, oh, how dare he? He's the new Hitler. We've got to go kill him. Now, this last weekend, in response to a school bus accident that killed 10 Arab children, injured 40 of them, Benjamin Netanyahu, on his own Facebook page, made a comment that he wished death to all the Arabs. Nobody paid any attention in the American media. If Ahmadinejad is alleged to say, wipe Israel off the map, it's headline news. When Netanyahu on his own Facebook page wishes death to all Arabs, business as usual. Not worth talking about. Remember what I said yesterday. There's actually a U.S. Senate investigation that showed Israel is bribing the American media to always report the news in Israel's favor. The U.S. Senate knew about this 10 years ago, classified the report. It only came out this last year. That's why we call them prostitutes. They'll take your money and they'll say whatever that you want. All right, moving right along here. I'm going to take a little time to talk about science, and I'm going to poke a little bit of fun at Al Gore and the Carbonazis. As you're probably hearing, there's been serious problems with ice and snow. It's a very, very hard winter over in Europe. The Danube River briefly froze over. And despite all the talk about global warming and carbon dioxide, and you've got to pay a carbon tax, and we've got to have a global environmental authority, the reality is all of their predictions and prognostications are wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't really care. The goal isn't to actually determine whether the world is getting hotter or colder. It's to trick you out of your money and your obedience. Remember what I said about government's only ability to have power over you is their willingness to lie to you and their ability to get away with it because the media isn't double-checking on them. That's what we're doing here over at Republic Broadcasting.